Having arrived, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Common Council for January 17, 2023. Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We have 11 members present in the chambers, 11 members signed to the civic clerk, 1 member, Mr. Johnson, is excused.
Very well. Thank you, Clerk. Now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation offered by Alder Morgan. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alder Morgan.
God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of their city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are the stewards of your authority. Guide us to be leaders of your people's needs. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
Thank you, Alder. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve it. Second.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to approve our minutes from the December 2022 meeting. That was seconded by Alder Galvin. Any changes here? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Approval of the agenda.
Your Honor, I approve this agenda.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Randy Scannell, Alder Scannell, makes a motion to approve this agenda, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any changes here? Alder Eck?
Yes, I'd like to request to move item Q up right after L, please. The whole thing.
Okay, Alder Eck makes an amendment, offers an amendment to move item Q before, how about before M?
Before M. Oh, I said after L, but yeah, okay.
Oh, okay, I thought you said before L. In between L and M. That was seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Q between L and M.
Your Honor,
The ayes have it.
Poll protection and policy up. I know there's some people here that are waiting to see the results of our votes on that.
Okay, where would you like that one?
Well, it should go really quick, I'm assuming, so if we could just put it right
How about-
after.
How about before Q to keep things in order? Okay, Alder Scannell offers an amendment to move item O just before Q. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Entertain a motion to approve as amended.
Motion to approve is amended.
Second?
Alder Scannell makes a motion to approve the agenda as amended, seconded by Alder Eck. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Report by the mayor. Just wanted to briefly thank all of the organizers for the MLK Day events that occurred both over the weekend and then yesterday in the community and in our council chambers. So we had, I think it was the 26th annual out at NWTC, which is always a really great program and highlighting some students in the Green Bay area who offered their tributes to Martin Luther King. Then we had a service over at Divine Temple, which as always was really well put together. A guest speaker from Milwaukee came up and inspired us all. Also want to thank them. Our Conservation Corps also had a day of service. I was planning to join them, but in the downpour, I took a rain check, so planning to join them on a future date, but would open up that invitation to others as well. I know Alder Grant has joined Conservation Corps for one of their events in the past, and they're always looking for volunteers from the community. So please feel free to reach out to them and get involved. And then finally, I know Alder Hutchinson is going to touch on this as well, but we had the Equal Rights Commission here unveiling their housing report on Martin Luther King Day in his honor and in his spirit. So really appreciate all the work that was put into that presentation and that report as well. So with that, I will move along to announcements from our council. Alder Hutchison.
Thank you, Mayor. The Equal Rights Commission did submit a report that we will see as Common Council in the first meeting in February. I was a speaker at the end of the meeting, and I tried to, let's say I attempted to recognize the elders that were present. I did a horrible job. I recognized 1 out of 5. So I want to set the record straight. Alder Eck was there, who I saw, and then there was Alder Stevens, Alder Stoyer, and then on Zoom, Alder Burnett and Alder Grant were there. Was there anyone else that, or are you just keeping your hands down to keep me feeling better? Okay, so I thank everyone for attending. Please read the report, and I apologize to those who were there and didn't get recognized. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Just a little tip, you can just say members of our council. If you don't want to go through all of them, that's the route that I took.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Alder. And other announcements from our council? Seeing none, we will move along to recognitions and awards. This is a special one. We've had it before, but very rarely do we have the opportunity to recognize some of our city employees. Every single day, they go above and beyond in service to our community. But this is even beyond, I guess, what we would normally expect. So I do want to take the opportunity to highlight these individuals for our council and for our community. So this is in recognition of the efforts of Jody Cooney, Andrew Teese, Tom Weiss, and Jake Vandenhoevel. Jake is not able to join us tonight, but these are all staff members from our Department of Public Works, and really appreciate what they've done for us. I'm going to read a description, so if you all could stand when I mention your names and read through what you all have done for our citizenry, I would really appreciate that. So first we'll start with Jody Cooney and Andrew Tice. Jody and Andrew were assigned to a truck to collect yard and garden waste. While collecting on Bond Street, they noted 2 people with bicycles who had stopped by the roadside. One person was sitting on the curb. Minutes later, when they got closer to the bicyclist, the man on the curb had still not gotten up, and his wife appeared to be confused or in shock. So they stopped and asked if they needed assistance. The elderly gentleman sitting on the curb appeared non-responsive, and his face was starting to turn blue or purple. Jody and Andrew called 911 and administered chest compressions until the rescue squad arrived. DPW was told the man had a heart issue and received several stents after arriving at the hospital. His life was saved by getting medical attention in a timely manner thanks to our staff. So thank you both. Next, we have Tom Weiss. Tom was assigned to work at the Westside Garage Waste Center. He saw a semi-truck drive into the facility, which is quite unusual, so he asked the driver if he could help. The truck driver had 5 pallets of fresh pears that his employer told him to get rid of. Tom inspected the load, realized the pears were fresh, and didn't want to see them go to waste. So he suggested to the driver that Paul's Pantry would most likely be interested in receiving the pears for distribution to local families. The truck driver was from out of town and didn't know where Paul's Pantry was, so Tom led the truck to Paul's Pantry. Paul's Pantry was delighted to receive the fresh fruit, and I personally got a message from Bob Hornacek out at Paul's Pantry in appreciation of Tom's efforts. So thank you, Tom, for going above and beyond for our community. Last, we have Jake Vandenhoevel, who is not able to join us this evening. But Jake was performing assigned street sweeping duties on Bader Street. He noticed a gentleman on the sidewalk who appeared to be in distress and stopped to ask if he needed assistance. The man told Jake that he didn't feel well and didn't think he could make it home on his own. So Jake called the police department and waited with the man until they arrived. Upon arrival, police officers called for an ambulance. The gentleman was brought to the hospital and received medical assistance. We don't have exact details on the man's ailment, but DPW was told that without Jake's intervention, the man would have died. So thanks to Jake for his service to the community as well. to our appointments. First, reappointments.
Motion to approve.
Alder Scannell offers a motion to approve our reappointments. That was seconded by Alder Galvin. Any thoughts on that or questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. On to our new appointments.
Motion to approve.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to approve those appointments, seconded by Alder Stoyer. Any comments on those? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and those appointments are approved. On to our lone public hearing. This is a resolution regarding vacation of an unimproved public right-of-way, southern portions of East Shore Drive. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to that item? Anyone here to speak to that item? Is there anyone here to speak to that item? Clerk, let the record reflect there is no one in attendance to speak to that item. We will next move along to ordinance's second reading for adoption.
And to adopt. Oh, motion to suspend the rules.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to suspend the rules, seconded by Alder Weary. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The rules are suspended.
Now motion to adopt.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to adopt these ordinances, seconded by Alder Weary. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will use the board.
You may vote. It passed. Here we go.
I think you can scroll down.
Yep.
All right, those were adopted unanimously. Now we will move along to the report of the Protection Policy Committee from January 9, 2023. Alder Galvin offers a motion to approve. That was seconded by Alder Stevens. Items here to be handled separately. Seeing none, all in favor of approving this report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that report has been approved. So if anyone was here for protection and policy, those items were just approved.
I think, if I could, Mayor.
Alder Brunette?
I think just for a point of clarification, because the committee approved the appeal of a denial, so just for the person's interest, when we approve the committee report, we're approving that the appeal was approved, right, for their sake.
Endorsing the action of the committee, correct? Yep. So again, if anyone's here for that, that just occurred. Now we're on to report of the Plan Commission. Alder Stevens makes a motion to approve. That was seconded by Alder Galvin. Any items here to be handled separately? Yeah, Alder Eck.
4.
Item 4. Any other items? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the remainder of that report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 4. Alder Scannell makes a motion to approve item 4. Seconded by Alder Galvin. Item was pulled by Alder Eck.
Yes, I would like to open the floor, please.
Okay, Alder Eck makes a motion to
To
open the
make a
floor.
motion to,
Seconded by Alder Stoyer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is open. And sir, if you could just state your name and address for the council, and then you have 3 minutes to offer your testimony.
Hi, my name is Scott Litticoat. I live at 1431 Springdale here in Green Bay. And thank you. I'm here to share some financial perspective. I understand we settled on a city budget of $116.4 million, a 3.1% increase over last year. But I'll pay 27% more to the city this year. You all know why. Bad news for me, bad news for thousands of others like me around Green Bay, and really bad news for the poor.
I apologize, I pulled the wrong one. I'm sorry.
So we're on the report of the Plan Commission right now?
Yeah, and I
Finance Committee?
said Q4, didn't I?
Okay,
I
yeah.
apologize. It was
So-
actually supposed to be.
Okay, we will be getting to that item, so
Okay.
apologies for the
Very good.
confusion there. I'll entertain a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. We do have a motion to approve item 4, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That item is approved. Now we are back to item M, which is Landmarks Commission. So this is to deny the certificate of appropriateness on the design review for window replacements located at 240 North Broadway, referred from the 12/20/22 council meeting. I'll kick things over to our city attorney, Attorney Bungert.
Yes, so tonight is just a continuation of the hearing that took place back in December. As many of you probably remember, the direction from council at that time, after we had gone into closed session for deliberation, was for the parties to submit written briefs. Those briefs were distributed to all the parties and to all the council members. We also provided written copies of all of them as well for your reference. And at this point, I would recommend moving back into closed session to continue deliberations and discussing the briefs that have been submitted by the parties.
Very good.
Motion to open the floor.
Okay. Alder Scannell makes a motion to open the floor if interested parties would like to comment to the council. That was seconded by Alder Camp. Excuse me.
I see. Yep. Sorry, Mayor, just procedural issue. It really should be a motion to continue the hearing that occurred on December 20th, so everyone is still under oath and everything is under sworn testimony for anybody that spoke previously at the hearing.
Okay,
Motion to continue.
The hearing from December.
I think so.
If they want to deliberate and then ask questions at that point.
Right, if there
Oh,
are
yeah,
still
okay,
remaining,
yeah,
yes,
okay,
you can
that's
always
right,
reopen the
fine.
floor to ask additional questions, correct.
So Alder Scannell makes a motion to open the floor, seconded by Alder Campbell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. So if you're interested in approaching, we've got 5 minutes to address our council.
Fine, yes.
Good evening, everybody. Garrett Bader, 300 North Van Buren Street. My attorney, Corey Tilkins, is with me here today as well. He'll be up briefly to speak as well. First and foremost, thanks again for last month. I know you guys deliberated. You took to this, and I appreciate that. It was appreciated a lot. I'd like to quickly go over the points that I discussed last month before Corey comes up and talks a little more on the legal sense of the brief that we submitted. So, first and foremost, I hope everybody knows the goal here really is to save this building. The building is not in great shape. This ensures that it can stick around for another 100 years. It's an important building. We should want to save it. The irony, of course, in the situation is the suggestion that somehow what we would do to it would harm it, which couldn't be farther from the case for this building or any property I would seek to develop. What we have here is truthfully a difference of opinion as to character defining. Are the 3 windows in which we've been discussing truly character defining, or are they not? I respectfully disagree with the Landmarks Commission that they are. I believe they aren't, and Corey, again, will talk a little bit more about that fact. Economics do matter when it comes to buildings like this. To keep older buildings, historic buildings living, we need to be able for them to be representative of the current day. That simply means that for users, for uses today, we have to be able to modify at times and be respectful of current needs compared to maybe what originally was built. We believe we're doing that in a way that respects the building but yet allows it to be economically feasible and viable for another 100 years. Another concern that was raised was that approving the windows that I would like sets a terrible precedent, that it would somehow weaken either the ordinance or the Landmarks Commission or the process. Respectfully, I disagree. You all here tonight proves that this doesn't happen. These are situations that can be reviewed and studied on a case-by-case basis. It does not weaken, it does not ruin what we have. It allows that preservation and the discussion of that, the debate of that can happen. You all being the check to the balance of what goes in front of the commission based on ordinance. Finally, I'd ask that you put your trust in me. I hope I've proven that by now, that the projects I do better this city and make it the best it can be. This will be yet another example. So trust in that, and the building, I promise, will turn out nicely in a way that respects the building, district, downtown, and the whole city. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll invite Corey up. He'll, again, talk some legalese to you all.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Bader. Any questions? Seeing none?
Right.
Thank you.
Just one.
Oh, Alder Scannell.
If the, no, good. If the council decides that we can't, for whatever reasons, accept your appeal, have you come up with any other plans to present to the board that, because it still might be windows that can be put in there, just not the big bay windows? Is there other options that you've considered perhaps to, if we hit the wall here,
For
so
that
to speak?
For that specific space, no, because the tenants that have shown interest are requiring, I hate to say the word demand, but they're requiring that for the needs of their businesses.
Good to know.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sir, the city clerk just needs to swear you in as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so just raise your right hand and say aye and state your name.
I, Corey Tilkins,
Swear that I will, that the testimony I will give in this action will be the whole truth,
swear that the testimony I give in this action will be the whole truth.
and if you choose, so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
And then just your name and address?
Sure.
For the council.
Good evening, council members. My name is Corey Tilkins. I am an attorney at Hager, Dwick & Zingler. Our business address is 200 South Washington Street here in Green Bay. Our firm represents BFAM LLC and Mr. Bader. BFAM is Mr. Bader's entity that owns the property on Broadway Street. BFAM's intent with this whole project is to honor the building's character defining traits while also being able to use the building for the best and most efficient use, which in their opinion is to renovate the building to allow for commercial tenants on the first floor with some residential tenants on the second floor. BFAM submitted their application for a certificate of appropriateness with the Landmarks Commission. The Landmarks Commission's biggest concern obviously was the removal of 3 small windows on the first floor, with the anticipated replacement of those windows with storefront windows that conform with other storefront windows on the Broadway facing side of the property, as well as the storefront windows on the Dousman side, facing side of the property. Obviously, you know, we submitted a brief analyzing the factors that the Landmarks Commission looks towards when making its recommendation. I do not intend to go through the entire brief today, but just wanted to kind of highlight some points that we wanted to make in your decision tonight. Again, in BFAM's opinion, the removal of these 3 small windows and replacing them with storefront windows fully complies with the factors that are set forth in the municipal code in section 44-1555. And in the brief we submitted, we spelled out those 9 factors verbatim for everyone to take a look at. In addition, we kind of did a brief synopsis on why we believed each of those factors was satisfied. In addition, we also had the opportunity to review the Landmarks Commission's brief that they submitted to each of you. And while we agree with the Landmarks Commission that the grant of authority and procedure that they were provided with in section 44-1552 is not discretionary. The commission does have discretion in analyzing these factors in determining whether or not the work would either detrimentally change or destroy the exterior features of the improvement or adversely affect the features of the improvement. Now, as I stated, the commission reviews the 9 factors we had, or guidelines that we had outlined in section 44-1555 to determine whether the proposed work should receive a certificate of appropriateness. Now, I think it's important to remember as we're looking at these that all of these factors are subjective factors and they're not objective, meaning that one person's interpretation as to whether or not this factor is satisfied could differ than another person's interpretation as to whether or not these factors have been satisfied. The municipal code does not say that the factors need to be interpreted in one way or the other. It just says that they're out there. These are what the commission analyzes in determining how it's going to make a recommendation to you, the common council. Again, in BFAM's opinion, the changes or renovations that they want to complete on this project would not adversely affect the exterior features of this property, given the fact that many of the storefront windows are already in existence on this property. Now, I'd like to point out here that we took a look at the original application or nomination that was submitted with the National Register of Historic Places for the Broadway-Dousman district. And in this application, they discuss BFAM's property. In the application, it's identified as the Felix Duchateau property. And interestingly enough, in that application, it has a description of the property and its unique features that make it a contributing property to the district. Now, what you would see if you took a look at the application is that specifically for the Felix Duchateau Saloon, it mentions the following features. It mentions the storefront windows that we are hoping to include at the removal of the 3 smaller windows, the original transom beams of the property, the 4 projecting bay windows that are on the 2nd story of the property, and in fact, the application goes into a lot of detail as to how those bay windows are constructed and the features of those. In addition, it talks about the remaining windows on the 2nd floor that are not the bay windows themselves. And then it finally mentions the cornice at the top of the building. What it does not mention is the 3 windows that BFAM is looking to renovate and replace with the storefront windows. So while we understand that the Landmarks Commission is putting a great deal of importance on these windows, they were never mentioned in the original application, which could lead some people to believe that it wasn't necessarily a defining characteristic when this building was originally put into this historic district. As a final note here, our brief did mention a Wisconsin statute that was passed in 2015. And the statute has been in existence, but it was amended in 2015 at Wisconsin statute section 62.23, subsection 7, EM3. I know it's a mouthful, but it's a long statute here. But what this statute does is it provides that an owner of property that is affected by the decision of the City Landmarks Commission may appeal the decision to the Common Council. The section goes on to further state that the Common Council may overturn a decision of the Commission by a majority vote of the Common Council. There are no strings attached to that provision. It simply states that the Common Council can overturn the decision of the Landmarks Commission by a simple majority vote. Now, we also took a look at the legislative memo that went along when that revision was added to the statute here. And the memo states basically exactly what the statute says. And the memo states verbatim, The act allows a property owner affected by a decision of the Landmarks Commission to appeal the decision to the governing body of the local unit of government, and allows the governing body to overturn the Landmarks Commission's decision by a simple majority vote. Again, no conditions placed on it, simply says that the Common Council has discretion to overturn the Landmarks Commission decision by a majority vote. As we discussed, the factors the Landmarks Commission analyzes are subjective and open to interpretation as to whether or not they are satisfied. BFAM's position is that the factors have been satisfied, and the brief we submitted to all of you contains our explanation as to why we believe they are satisfied. Furthermore, the statutes, Wisconsin statutes, allow for the Common Council to use its discretion in overturning the decision made by the Landmarks Commission. The statute does not provide that the Common Council must agree with the Landmarks Commission's recommendation. It does grant them the discretion to come to their own decision-making. Due to the foregoing here, the Common Council can, and we hope that it does, approve BFAM's application for a certificate of appropriateness in full and grant our appeal of the Landmark Commission's decision.
All right, thank you for your testimony, sir. Questions from council? Alder Hutchison?
I got a question on the specific statute.
Sure.
In the text we got, I believe from you.
Yeah, Alder? If you could just grab your mic.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
In the text we got, it says, well, could you say it again? Because I think we're missing a portion of it in the middle.
You would like me to read the statute directly for you?
I just wanted the numbers of the statute.
Oh, yes, okay. The statute number is 62.23 subsection 7, and I believe I omitted the subsection 7 in my brief to all of you. But it should be subsection 7, subsection EM, and then subsection 3.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks again, sir.
Thank you.
Comments from the other party?
Good evening. I'm Jason Flatt. I'm your City of Green Bay's Historic Preservation Specialist. If there's nothing procedural to do, I'll just jump in and say, we've heard the word opinion a lot. The lawyer's opinion, the builder's opinion. I want to present you fact, and I need to refer you to your municipal code, section 44-168. That's a definition section for the historic preservation ordinances. The word character is defined. Character defining elements, I'm quoting, include features. The word features is defined. It means includes the kind and texture of the building material and the type and style of all windows, doors, and other architectural elements. The windows in question are, by legal definition, character-defining features of the building. That's not an opinion, that's what it is. Now, speaking specifically to the National Register nomination paperwork submitted in 1999, yes, that paragraph for this building does not call out 3 saloon-style windows along North Broadway. It does specifically call out 3, not 4, storefronts. It does specifically call out the importance of the brick, and it calls out all sorts of other stuff. Now, just posing a question, do other buildings have cornices and bay windows? Sure. Do those other buildings have saloon-style windows, these character-defining features? No, that's unique to this building. That's an important character-defining aspect of this building. I apologize for arrogance, but this character-defining feature stuff is defined in multiple documents from the Secretary of the Interior, the Department of the Interior. Happy to list them. Secretary of the Interior also has professional qualification standards. That's to say that there are professional qualification standards for people dealing in architectural history, archaeology, architecture. These qualification standards are used to identify the people whose opinions, if you will, are appropriate in interpreting these standards. The Landmarks Commission has an architect whose professional qualification standards satisfy those standards of the Secretary of the Interior. My professional qualifications satisfy the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards for architectural history. Law isn't in there, neither is building construction. So again, this is speaking to opinion. This opinion that the windows are not character defining, when in fact, based on legal definition, they are. Speaking of the Secretary of the Interior standards, I want to point out those standards embody two important goals. It's, number one, the preservation of historic materials. The brick and the windows are historic materials here. And two, the preservation of a building's distinguishing character. And again, I refer you to the definition of character. It's in there. These standards that the City of Green Bay invokes, the Secretary of the Interior standards, these don't exist in a vacuum. They're the result of a professionalization of architectural history and historic preservation dating back to the 1920s, with a long process of being updated so as to establish true professional standards for appropriate historic preservation, so that everybody's opinion isn't given equal weight. There's fact, and then there's as many opinions as there are people. It's true that the city refers to these as guidelines, as well it should. So guidelines have been applied consistently by the Landmarks Commission in the 200 or so Certificate of Appropriateness applications reviewed. The guidelines are in place to give the Landmarks Commission direction. And where the Landmarks Commission might want to deviate from those guidelines, there must be a compelling reason. Now, that compelling reason typically is in the form of, say, a safety issue. Say a fire escape is needed, so we need to put another hole in the wall of the building. The compelling reason, if you will, that's been presented is that the owner feels the income potential, the highest economic value of this building, is increased by changing these windows. That argument, this economic aspect, has gone to the United States Supreme Court in a landmark case back in 1977. And it was found that the economic value of the building does not offset the good of historic preservation. It's the Penn Central case. Landmarks Commission knows this and has acted appropriately in saying that economic factors, as long as there's still economic use in your property, are not a compelling reason to set aside the guidelines and do what you want. So the favor that's being asked of you is a property owner stating, I can make more money if this law doesn't apply to me. Now, I imagine a lot of people could make that same argument about a lot of different things. And I look to you. What is the compelling reason here? Why should these guidelines not apply in this case? The only argument we've heard is that more money can be made, presumably. Perhaps not, I don't know. That's what's being said. But, you know, preservation philosophy of this country really isn't up for debate tonight or any other night, not here. The fact is, these windows are character-defining features of the building. The Landmarks Commission has taken a consistent approach to applying the guidelines to every COA that's come before that committee. In reading the brief provided, there's a lot of opinion. I ask you to take that for what it is. Thank you.
All right, any questions? Alder Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Flatt. You obviously know your stuff. That's impressive. Saloon-style windows, and I use that, you know, in quotes or whatever. It's hard to find, right? I've spent the last 2 weeks hours Googling and searching for saloon-style windows and similar windows, and I've probably looked at thousands of photos, and I couldn't find anything similar to this. So where did you find that definition?
I don't think, well, saloon-style window isn't a defined term. Somehow in the conversation, these have been given that name, saloon-style windows. I don't know if it's just a vernacular off-the-cuff remark or what. But what you have here is an architectural element, a character-defining feature that speaks directly to the history of the building, to the historic importance of the building, to that period of significance for that district that makes that district eligible for the National Register.
Okay.
So if you walk along the road and you see buildings with cornices, those cornices don't tend to tell you what that building was used for. Storefront windows, probably stores. Here, you have unusual windows. They're up high. You can't see in. If you're looking out, you see the sky.
And that's where my question goes, is that if you search 1900-style saloons or bars, you don't see that. You see actually many saloons and bars that have windows wrapping around a building. And, you know, do we know where the bar was located in the building? Was it
Yes.
beneath those windows, or was it on the other side?
We know it was in that 1/4 store section
Yep.
of the building.
Was it on the windows side, or was it on the other side? Do we know that?
So if you have the exterior wall along North Broadway, the bar itself was on the interior wall.
Okay.
And you'd have patrons along that exterior wall.
Gotcha. So it's more of the fact that they're unusual windows. It's not that they're bar-style windows or saloon-style windows, because I can't find any mention of that anywhere, unless you
So
can.
what's special about them is that they're potentially unique. And they're
Potentially.
unique to this
Okay.
building.
So the potential.
Well, find me another one. Find me another
I
one in
couldn't.
the Broadway district.
So they might be just, you know, I'm just saying they're not a saloon-style window, really. It's not, that's not necessarily the purpose, because I can't find a
I
replica of
wouldn't
it.
get wrapped up on that term, saloon-style
All right,
window.
it's been used a lot by both
No.
parties, so,
To be specific, I would say they are character-defining windows.
all right, I appreciate it, thanks.
Alder Scannell? And then Alder Starr.
You've also mentioned the brickwork. If the developer had came forth with a plan that put in windows, but below those character-defining windows, do you think the commission would have a problem losing some of the brickwork to accommodate larger windows, but still maintain those three unique?
I'm very reluctant to ever speak on the commission's.
Well,
behalf.
in your, just for yourself then.
I have to refer you back to the Secretary of the Interior Standards. Two important things. One, the preservation of historic materials. The brick is historic material. The overall form and fenestration, the arrangement of the openings of doors and windows, that would be negatively impacted by punching new holes in the wall.
So even if
you-
there was enough, windows put in, but there's still brick around, that you would still, because we're taking out some brick, it would be an issue.
From a historic
So-
preservation, professional perspective, that would not be an elegant solution to the problem.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Starr?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Flatt, for coming in. The question one comment is that you mentioned that there were 197 COA applications and only 4 have been denied. So I think one of the things we look at here is that, you know, it's not like an overbearing group that is looking to change everything here. It seems to me that there's only been a few episodes where you actually refused that. That's more of a comment, but I guess the question I had for you is, we spent years trying to get a certified local government status for this city. Do you feel that if this project goes through accordingly, that we will compromise our certified local government status?
No, your certified local government status is secure. The
Okay.
state statute that's been referenced is very clear. Common council can do as common council pleases. On behalf of the Landmarks Commission, I'm asking you to identify the compelling reason why council should overturn the Landmarks Commission's recommendation on this. Stepping aside ever so slightly, although the CLG status will remain, it puts the relationship between the City of Green Bay and the State Historic Preservation Office at a slightly different footing. The State Historic Preservation Office oversees the Certified Local Government Sub-Grant Program. So the city of Green Bay has been a beneficiary of that program for several years now, bringing in $100,000 for use to identify other buildings that are eligible for the National Register. The relationship kilter that I'm speaking of, though, is if the city demonstrates that the city is willing to talk the talk but not walk the walk, you know, doing good preservation per the Secretary of the Interior standards, then that is conceivably a disincentive for the State Historic Preservation Office to continue to fund preservation activity in the city of Green Bay when other communities might be walking the walk and talking the talk, so to speak. Now that's just my personal observation. I, take that for what you will, but no, the CLG status is not jeopardized by this action tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Brunette, then Alder Galvin.
Thank you, Mr. Flatt, for your position and for articulating your response. It's rather insightful. One thing that you had mentioned, and I don't want to make it kind of like he said versus he said, because Mr. Bader and his attorney had mentioned that economic interest was perhaps part of the reason, but I didn't hear from them that that is the only reason. And let me kind of clarify this. Maybe I'll make a statement and you can respond to the statement. Because the economic interest is one part, because as a city government, it's obviously desirable to generate taxable revenue. This property currently and potentially into the future won't generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue to the city, but I'm not speaking for Mr. Bader or his attorney, but it seems to me that the preservation of that property that will take us another 50 or 100 years into the future is a huge part of the consideration. In other words, if this development doesn't go through and the appeal is not approved to remove the windows, the potential is that that lot, that property will not be improved because there aren't many businesses or entities that would be willing to go there to turn a profit, because a lot of businesses, all businesses, need to generate some sort of property to justify their investment. So you kind of made it seem like it's only economic interest, where Mr. Bader and his attorney kind of seemed to argue that it's the city would be allowing some private development to preserve the building as it stands, albeit without the saloon windows, for many decades into the future. Can you respond to that?
I'm not sure that I understand a question here.
You made it sound as though Mr. Bader and his attorney were arguing that the sole reason for us to approve this would be economic, where he is basically arguing, not to speak for him, that this will allow for that property to be preserved and used for generations into the future, or
So
decades into the future. Do
the
you think that
brief-
there are other interests other than purely economic for Mr. Bader in the development?
Insofar as I'm aware, no other compelling reason has been offered to the Landmarks Commission as to why this change should be granted. In reading Mr. Bader's attorney's brief, it's clear, the proposed renovations will maintain the historic character of the property, quoting that. That's just patently false. That appears over and over again. Saying that doesn't make it true. From a preservation perspective, the sky is red. It is not. Will the building sit empty and fall into disrepair if this proposal doesn't go through? I don't know, but I do know that the historic preservation ordinances in the city of Green Bay allow the city to intervene in a property to ensure that it's stabilized until a developer can be found to rehabilitate the property in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So, from my perspective, you have a developer here who has decided not interested in applying for tax credits. Okay, those are off the table. But in turning down the tax credits, there seems to be this opinion that the philosophy of preservation no longer applies to the same standard. And that's just not the case. The city has properly aligned its preservation philosophy with that of the Secretary of the Interior. Some communities have more strict standards, colors and landscaping and the like. We're not interested in that. That's just crazy stuff. But it's really not our place to establish guidelines that differ from the Secretary of the Interior standards because this is the accepted approach nationwide. This is the professional philosophy of preservation. So is there another developer in the wings that can do this without altering the windows? I don't know. I haven't been marketing the property. From my perspective, if this developer must have those windows larger, then this isn't the right developer for this building.
Right.
There are a lot of buildings in the city of Green Bay that are not on the National Register. Much more that aren't on the National Register than that are. This one's been on the National Register of Historic Places since 1999. There were no surprises here.
Would you be willing to concede the fact that Mr. Bader may not simply be looking for economic interest of the city, but perhaps his another motivation would be to help preserve the building, albeit without the saloon windows, for use for the city of Green Bay and our tourists and visitors and businesses, that it's not simply an economic interest that he's arguing?
So I have to refer to the, my grandfather's axe or the ship of Theseus. Your motivation may be good in saying, I want to replace the handle on that axe, and I'm going to replace the head on that axe. And now I've saved it for 100 years to come. But that approach is the exact opposite of what, quote, good preservation practice is in the United States. So while the motivation may be pure, and clearly they're stating, we're doing this to preserve the building, the approach is contrary to the Secretary of the Interior standards for proper rehabilitation. So yes, I can see he wants to fix the building for the future, but this isn't the way to do it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you explaining your argument. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Alder Galvin and then Alder Moore. Alder Galvin?
When Alder Scannell asked you about putting bay windows on Broadway, and your answer was, even if he kept the saloon windows and some of the brick, you didn't think that would pass muster. Was that my understanding?
Yes, and that's not so much opinion, that's just a strict interpretation of the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines as embodied in Municipal Code Section 44-1555.
Okay, so even if someone else came forward, and say just even with another building, but using this one as an example, if Mr. Bader was to replicate the bay windows and the framing around it and everything that you have on Dousman Street and replicate that on Broadway, you would still be against that then?
So, per the Secretary of the Interior standards, such an act would be a conjectural feature, and they're very specifically frowned upon. It would be akin to say, I've got a beautiful old house, but wouldn't it look better with a big tower on the side? This conjectural feature is specifically a no-no in preservation philosophy.
Well, I'm thinking that if there were windows on Broadway that exactly resembled the windows on Dousman, thus matching what was originally done, that doesn't equate to a tower being put
Correct.
alongside a house.
So a reconstruction of a missing feature, big thumbs up. So if there's a bay window missing where we know one was, by all means, reconstruct. That's fine. What I think we're getting at is, since there's storefront windows on one side, why not carry that feature around to the other side where there had never been any before? That now is a conjectural feature that is incongruous with the history of the property, and you're losing historic material, you're altering the historic form, the historic style.
So it's original or nothing, basically.
It's original or nothing, or a reconstruction of the original or nothing, but that's really kicking a lot of nuance to the side, okay?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Flatt. Alder Scheuer makes a motion to close the floor. Seconded by Alder Eck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. Time for closed session. Yeah, Alder Scannell?
Not for the, it was mentioned that the city could step in and preserve a building from falling into ruin. Do you know, does anybody can answer how that is, what the procedure is for the city to do that, where the funds come for that, and, or is anything set aside for that? How does that?
Didn't we do the Schumacher building? Shower Schumacher?
We do own it. Director Steck-Schulte?
Absolutely, Alder. There's certainly, I think the Shower Schumacher building would be an example of ownership. Certainly if the efforts being, we've had to make, I think, been longer than my tenure here, but there's been in process for quite a while. I think there've been a couple of rounds of investments in the structure of the building to attempt to preserve key aspects of it until such time a development can move forward on that building. Right now, the intention is still to try to identify a private developer. We have had, at least in my 2 years here, at least 3 different proposals come forward that have not proven to be financially viable. I think the key aspect of it is certainly, if, say, the city decided to be the developer of the building and to make all of the improvements, certainly, I think the key challenge is certainly funding those improvements. I don't have the Shower Schumacher information directly in front of me, but it was a substantial investment in terms of, would be, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars at least to repair the roof. And then certainly you just kind of get things back to maintaining them, and then actually getting the building to a status point where you could actually lease to a tenant would be a substantial investment. That could be done either through tax increment financing if we ended up finding a private developer to own the project, which has been problematic so far. Other funding sources would need to be identified in order for us to really proceed and do that without a private developer in hand. There are maybe some grant funds that we could be, that are very competitive, and, you know, certainly couldn't make any promises or guarantees on those. Probably a tax increment financing situation would probably be the best opportunity for us to fund any improvements that the city would need to make. But that would still require a private developer to have the building at some point in order to make it become taxable. Obviously, if the city continues to own it, it does not have any tax value.
Would that be the RDA be involved in that then? Would they be taking that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is sort of theoretical, but.
Okay, right, thanks.
You bet. Alder Steuer?
Just wanted to make a comment. Thank you, Your Honor. You know, for years, we had an advisory ordinance on the books, and there were many buildings that were kind of falling into disrepair, and the owners and the city didn't get along, maybe, or whatever. With this ordinance in place, now the city can't step in, and granted, if you have grants and other things, you can preserve that building. I think in the past, it was like, too bad. If that building just falls into disrepair, that is raising by neglect, and that was an advisory type thing. Now with this ordinance in place, that should not happen. So it's a big distinction. So raising by neglect is not good either. So even with this building, my thought is that, you know, if the city could come together with some ideas and some grants in that they could at least preserve the building until such time that it could be repurposed. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Alder. We should probably get to closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
All right, Alder Scannell makes a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second for that? Seconded by Alder Campbell. Alder Scannell, do you have the language?
I do. The council may convene a closed session pursuant to section 19.85, subsection 1, subsection A, Wisconsin statutes, for purpose of deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing before that governmental body. The council will thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.85, subsection 2, Wisconsin statutes, to take action on items discussed in closed session, if appropriate, and to consider the remainder of the agenda.
All right, thank you, Alder. We will use the board.
You may vote. How would you like to be recorded?
Yes.
I didn't come up either.
How would you like to be recorded?
Yes.
I'll just do a roll call. For those who didn't vote, Alder Grant? Yes. Alder Hutchison?
Yes.
Alder Morgan?
Yes.
Alder Stevens?
Yes.
All right, that is, go ahead.
All right, so we will move to closed session. call our council back to order. Alder Eck.
Okay, I make a motion for staff to proceed as directed in closed session.
Oh, just one second. My apologies. We need a vote to return to regular order.
Motion to return to regular.
Motion was made by Alder Scannell and seconded by Alder Stoyer. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now, Alder Eck.
Okay, a motion for staff to proceed as directed in closed session.
Alder Eck makes a motion to direct staff to proceed as directed in closed session. That was seconded by Alder Scannell. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now on to N, Report of the Improvement and Services Committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Items to be handled separately. Seeing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That report has been adopted. On to
Okay, now what do I?
Report of the Protection Policy Committee granting operator licenses. Alder Scannell makes a motion to approve, seconded by Alder Weary. Any names to be handled separately or abstentions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Report of the Finance Committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Galvin. Items to be handled separately.
Okay, now, number
Item 4.
4, please.
Absolutely. Any other items? Hearing none others. All in favor of approving the remainder of that report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's what.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion on item 4.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Galvin. Item was pulled by Alder Eck.
And motion to open the floor.
Alder Eck makes a motion to open the floor, seconded by Alder Stoyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is open. Sir, apologies for the delay.
Yes.
You're up.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Alder Galvin.
I'm willing to let this gentleman speak, but based on how his speech started out earlier, and I'm looking at item number 4, I guess he has to direct what he's saying towards this item.
Yep, no, that point's well made. So, sir, if you just want to direct your comments to the item itself, I assume it's related to the revaluation. So proceed with that
I
knowledge.
was led to understand that I could speak on items of finance, so whatever it is that you're exactly expecting me to,
So
in regard to the assessment.
yeah, I can read the item for you if you'd like.
Sure.
It says to refer to staff to inquire with the top 10 cities in the state of Wisconsin and a couple of our nearby municipalities to determine how frequently they do their revaluations and if it's by ordinance, policy, or just by practice, and also to inquire what the presumed cost might be for the city to do it on a more frequent basis.
Okay, so I can't say that I have, all of my remarks confine themselves exactly to that narrow topic.
Okay.
So am I free to speak, or do I need to go into closed session?
No, just try to direct them as best you can.
Okay, because a fair amount of my remarks have to do with that reassessment and, let's see.
I don't think you read the first part.
Well, the motion is what I read.
I guess my concern is,
Alder Galvin.
obviously, sir, it sounded like you were upset with your taxes. And if you.
And unhappy with reassessment and unhappy with with things that flowed from all of that too.
Okay, now, but this is just about whether we should do reassessment, how often we should do it, examining the cost of doing it. If you really have a complaint about your assessment or something.
I don't have a complaint specifically about my
Or
assessment.
about your taxes or anything, you could certainly have your alder put forth a communication for the next finance meeting, which you could address there and again address at council if you want to. And then it would be specific to what your
Okay,
complaints are.
I don't want to get going here and just be shouted down and stopped again. So either you want to hear what I have to say, or I'll return another time.
Yeah, like I said, you're free to speak. It just has to be related to the item here.
Okay, because of reassessment and the fact that the city budget increased, my taxes went up by more than 27% this year. I think that's a very sad state of affairs, and what I was about to say was the terrible effect that that has on poor people in Green Bay, some of whom I work directly with and communicate with. Those are people who are, in addition, and I was going to talk a little bit about the inflation that has bit them the last couple of years, inflation and then reassessments like this, people like that have, how are they going to pay their increased property taxes or the increased rents? Well, they're fighting to keep above water in so many other respects. This is something that I'm not sure how other communities do it, but to have individuals like me and others who own properties where especially poor people live, to have this kind of a reassessment done is just awful. It's a horrible thing. And I was going to make the point in my wider remarks that to come in with a budget that is increased on top of all of that is really not a good thing. Now, how you go about doing something like that, my understanding is that there are cities that have computer programs that do reassessments on an annual basis. And that would allow for not only increases in reassessments, but also decreases in reassessments, because there are certainly any number of economists right now who are saying that this economy could go backwards now, and where does that leave me with my increased assessment if that should happen? And especially, where would that leave poor people if that were to happen? And with that kind of technology available, it seems to me that we can do justice more to people like me who are all around the city. I'm sure many of you have heard of complaints about the reassessments. That do better justice to me, but also better justice to people who are really definitely struggling.
Thank you, sir. That's definitely in the spirit of the motion here. And just, you're probably aware of this, but it's been 18 years since we had a revaluation conducted in the city.
I can't understand why.
Yeah. So they obviously need to be done more frequently, and that's why this item is before the Finance Committee. So thank you. Any questions for our guest? None. Thank you. Motion?
Motion to close the floor.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to close the floor. Seconded by Alder Eck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. A motion on this item was already offered. Alder Campbell?
I don't know the process, but after closed session there, and I know we recommended push the staff, but would be appropriate to let the parties know that
No.
it'll be returning, if anything.
Sure, we could refer to Attorney Bungert just to
I
explain
would just ask for clarification
the
from the
process.
parties.
Right, so essentially and this is going back to
The closed session item.
the closed session item. So since the direction was for staff to proceed as directed and closed staff, the typical procedure is then staff then returns back with the directions given to it, to the body for further discussion and hearing. So the
And
item
just
will
to-
the item has to be resolved, so it will be returning back to council.
And just to make the point, we will be back as soon as possible
Yes.
to do that and be in communication with both parties after the conclusion of the meeting. It'll come back here. It's just a continuation. Potentially. It's just another continuation. So we have a motion on the floor on R4. Yeah, there was a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're on to the report of the Personnel Committee. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Items here to be handled separately. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Public Arts.
Motion to approve.
Alder Scannell makes motion to approve. Seconded by Alder Galvin. Items here to be handled separately. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We've got our informational items, building report and municipal court report for December 2022. Now on to committee of the whole. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any discussion? None, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That item has been approved, and now we're on to resolutions.
Motion to suspend the rules.
And take up all?
Take up all
Okay. Alder
12 in one vote.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to suspend the rules and take up resolutions 1 through 12 with one roll call vote. Seconded by Alder Weary. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The rules are suspended.
Motion to adopt.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to adopt these resolutions, seconded by Alder Galvin. Discussion here. Seeing none, we will use the board.
You may vote. Thank you. And Alder Burnett?
I'm a yes, it didn't come
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you.
May display.
And the resolutions are adopted unanimously. Ordinance is first reading.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to suspend the rules, take up these items with one roll call vote. Seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Motion to advance.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to advance these items to a second and final reading, seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Petitions and communications. We have none, and before we adjourn, I would meant to say this at the top of the meeting, but welcome to Chief Knott, his first meeting in the city of Green Bay. I hope it was everything you were looking for.
Motion to adjourn.
Alder Scannell makes a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. That is a nettlesome one, huh?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting,
Yeah.
kind of like, I think you and I are feeling the same. Lines, you know, it's issues.
Right, it is, and I think, I don't know, maybe the legal reason is fairly simple in saying that it's similar to the action of the Landmarks Commission in their approval of a relocation of the door, you know, we feel like windows don't have, characteristics of the door, that's why it's been, you know, the appellant's been upheld or whatever it is, but I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but I don't know. I do think, you know, it'd be helpful to have a communication after the fact. You know, just like.
Best of intentions, you know, the reality is going to be so much what the intent was.
And I think there's a risk of losing. Yeah, it appears unreasonable. You know what I mean? So like, I think we should probably take a look at it.
Hi, yes. Yes, so essentially, so the matter obviously has to go back to council, because council has to issue a decision. Has to issue its findings of fact.
So the February 7th